What up guys, it is Justice here and welcome back to Runescape. I'm just going to say straight away, I am so excited for Monday. The Invention Elite skill is being released. This video is going to take you through the skill and what we know so far about all sorts. There is so much to know. There is so much to know. Okay, I'm going to give this my best shot with the time I've got, which is a Saturday afternoon. I've done 7 hours of research and a load of information to cover due to that research with a skill which has not yet been released. So Giants could technically change things before it's released Monday, but plenty of future smaller videos will be released on my channel over the course of training this skill to share with you different things myself and the community have discovered. Gameplay content is at a minimum as Invention is released Monday, but I thought I'd share all this information with you now before the release as it's the most up to date and it means you aren't going to go into the skill blind. This is going to cover content for beginners, but I've also put lots of thought into how it will impact mid to high tier players of the community. So let's get straight into this. The 27th skill will be released on Monday, the 25th of January, the very first elite skill. It's going to require 80 divination, crafting and smithing to train. The skill goes up to level 120. Like dungeoneering, the reason they've decided to do this predominantly is because of its elite status. So originally they were wondering whether to go to 120 or not, but they decided to do it for the elite status. And it would be strange for it to only go up to level 99 considering you need 3 level 80s to unlock it, along with the fact that the skill will be released in batches throughout 2016. By the way, I'm going to write out jargon definitions related to the invention skill in the description below to help anyone who needs them. The XP curve is flattened out, and so there will be a steady increase in XP per hour as you level up, contrasting to the existing skills where there is a huge jump in XP per hour when you reach around level 92. It's going to require just over 36 million XP for level 99 and 80 million XP for level 120 from what I've heard, not sure why it's 80. The halfway point to 99 for Invention will be around level 84. The guild is located northeast of Faladorn near the Dwarven Mines. There are multiple workbench locations across the map, however you only need to go to the guild on the first day of release or whenever you first want to carry out this skill in order to do the tutorial. After this you can work directly from your inventory, I've heard, dismantling items with the light bulb on the bottom left hand corner of your inventory. The capes will be shown on screen, the level 99 and 120 retrospectively. There's been lots of debate amongst the community over the colour scheme chosen. End of the day, it is a huge deal as well as new skills are rarely introduced into the game. Retro styled cape as well, for anyone who's wondering by the way, for 99 will be released the week commencing 1st of February. So moving on to the most important thing within this video, I would say, what is the general idea of the invention skill? How do we train it? Well, it starts off with dismantling items for materials. These can also be known as components. You then use gizmos to make lots of perks for invention XP. These perks go from tier 1 to 4. This is where the majority of XP comes from, creating the perks. If the perks which you create come out bad, i.e. will literally be a detriment to you when skilling or PVMing, then you can disassemble those and start again by restarting. Now this is making me think it will be similar to speed training summoning, where you create pouches, break them down to scrolls, sell the scrolls to have a minute percentage of GP returnage, and create more pouches. Yes, I just said returnage, that is not a word. So, in Invention's case, for the most consistent XP per hour, it will be a matter of rinse and repeat to create those perks. Break them down and recreate more perks through repeating the process. Each time you break down, you receive some of the materials back as well. So as you can see on screen, once you find a good combo of materials, which gives a fair amount of XP, in this situation 3k on the Invention New RuneScape Elite Skill teaser on the official RuneScape page, you will create a gizmo with perks, click the repeat button and keep repeating until all gizmos have been used up within your inventory. You use a preset with your bank and fill your inventory again with new gizmos and repeat the process. Eventually you will have lots of gizmos in your bank full of perks. You will then re-break down or dismantle these gizmos to retrieve some of your original materials back and will then repeat the process of creating perks. That's how I think it's going to be done anyway. I can confirm it uses a gizmo each time you repeat, by the way, because the color of the weapon gizmo on the screen, for example, changes color to a brighter green when used when I was watching the dev Q&A. And that changes visibly on the interface system within your inventory. it also displays on the actual interface that you have 2 more gizmo shells available. So it will display how many gizmo shells you have available to use within your inventory, indicating it uses a gizmo each time you create perks. Now, the one thing I've just realized is when you do dismantle those gizmos, which have got perks on, do you get the materials back plus the original gizmo back, or does the gizmo also disappear? That's something which I'm going to have to wait till on Monday, but the gizmo might disappear. So, there is a huge but though. Not literally, but a huge but. The gizmos are created through the invention skill. So essentially the idea is to stockpile with gizmos and then use the rinse and repeat process. But how do we make gizmos? Well, gizmos need to be at first researched and unlocked with the currency of inspiration. Inspiration is a key word here. In order to unlock gizmos, it requires level 3 invention. Now, the inspiration currency doesn't seem to have any link to GP, by the way, but instead XP that you gain inside and outside the skill of invention. Once you unlock the gizmo, I don't know what's required to make them. Maybe I'll re-edit this and hopefully find out the answer before I release the video, but it will become obvious on Monday. So then I was like, what the heck? It's gonna take forever now to stockpile on gizmos, but no. Devices and gizmos which do not have perks on them are going to be tradable. Yes, guys, they are going to be tradable, and that's where the money comes in. Either way, this is going to be a very click-intensive skill, slightly less click-intensive than construction, I've heard. So what are the main ways in which you obtain experience for invention? Number 1, discovering and creating items such as gizmos. Number 2, disassembling or dismantling items for materials. Number 3, creating perks with gizmos and materials. That is the big, like, consistent XP per hour method right there. The rinse and repeat method which we went through earlier. And number 4, disassembling augmented items which you have leveled up for chunks of XP. These are going to give the highest return in XP in terms of individual chunks of XP, but it's not consistent. This will also give a higher return of materials if you level up your weapon, explained later on, unless you use certain devices, again, explained later on. It's very confusing, but just stay with me, we'll get through this. There are 4 rarities of materials when breaking down items: uncommon, common, rare, and other, which by the way includes something like an undead material. Interesting stuff. You can also use the links in the description for specifics on what materials you can get when dismantling certain items within the uncommon section, which we know so far. All will become clearer upon Monday's release of the skill, but again, you can find out all this information from the sources below in the description. Now I'm going to move on to briefly level unlocks, just a few little things which we know are going to be unlocked at certain levels. At level 16 you can begin augmenting your armor pieces, but on release date, guys, anyone who's going to really get up there quickly or wants to augment their tier 90 armor, which to be honest I would because I use tier 90 armor a lot, we can't augment armor that degrades to dust yet. It's not going to be doable on release date. Tech tree specific components I'm predicting are going to begin around level 40. I'll go into tech trees later. Accumulators, which are like specific devices that you can make and discover through the discovery stage with inspiration, can be made at level 60. These work oppositely to urns. These are really interesting things which you'll find out, whereby each unsuccessful strike at a tree, for example, will result in filling up your wood cutting accumulator. Once it's full, you can release it to gain XP. At level 74, we know Bandos components are unlocked. Most likely, these are going to be linked to Bandos armor. We do know there are components as well called Armadil, Zamorak, Saradomin, indicating the breakdown of other God Wars Dungeon items into unique God Wars Dungeon materials for invention, along with Noxious components, indicating the breakdown of tier 90 Noxious weaponry retrieved from Araxor, along with Ancient components as well, indicating the breakdown of Nex items, tier 80. This definitely suggests you will not be able to access these specific components, which most likely give higher tiered perks as well, until you are at that level. But you can break down these high level items whenever you want, and you will still receive the same amount of unique materials. You just can't use them yet to make perks until you're at the appropriate level. So let's move on to another way of training invention, a really interesting way which, you know, gets me the most excited, to be honest, because I love to PVM. So leveling up your weapons. This gives huge chunks of XP, but it's not the fastest rate as it's inconsistent. You only get the chunk of XP once you've leveled up your weapon. Now, when you get to a higher level, let's say, and you use noxious components and manage to create some amazing perks, which in turn will give you a juicy amount of XP, by the way, just making those perks. Well, because of how expensive it was for you to make that perk, because you had to break down, let's say, a noxious weapon to get those noxious components, you are not going to want to just dismantle it straight away unless you have billions and billions of GP. Therefore, you will augment a weapon with the perks you've made by attaching a perked up weapon gizmo, let's say, with your Drygors. You can then level up your augmented weapon, and when your weapon reaches a certain level, let's say level 6, you can choose to dismantle it for a nice chunk of invention XP, and you will also receive triple materials back once it reaches to that level 6. There's lots of different benefits at different levels. And those triple materials which you'll get in return, they will be of all the materials used to initially make that augmented weapon. It's an incentive to level up that weapon. So then it makes you think, how long will it take to level up a weapon as well? Will it be a worthy way of training the skill when balancing against the rinse and repeat process? To conclude this topic area, you will receive a huge chunk of XP, but the time it has taken you to level up the weapon will not outweigh consistent training of the skill through the rinse and repeat process. And then I wondered, what happens when you disassemble an augmented weapon? Well, from asking multiple questions to JMods, I found out a couple of options. You either just disassemble your augmented weapon for experience and components, but your weapon is completely destroyed, and therefore you lose that weapon completely, and it could be, a big chunk of your bank that. Or through discovery with inspiration currency, eventually you'll be able to unlock a specific unknown device which is going to be called something like the Siphon. This device retrieves the experience but not the components without destroying the gear. So you might want to use this with your most expensive weapons, which might make up most of your bank. Using this device will give you Invention XP representative of 2 levels lower than what your weapon is. So if you have a level 10 Noxious Longbow, let's say, when using this device, you will obtain XP equal to a level 8 Longbow. You will not receive any materials, and you will keep the original Longbow, which will then be level 0, and then it's a repeat cycle from that point onwards. So with your favorite weapons, you can just keep repeating that cycle. I think this method will be one of the most GP efficient methods of training Invention, but it's not going to be the most time efficient way of training the skill. So I will keep leveling up my weapons and disassembling them when they reach level 10, let's say, for consistent chunks of experience, because a large chunk of my game time on RuneScape is made up of PVMing. Also, all level 10 weapons will give the same amount of experience when disassembling. So where's the incentive for leveling up a higher tiered weapon? Well, the higher the tier, the more accuracy you have, and thus it will level up quicker. I'm guessing the level progression is based on the combat XP you receive from fighting or the combat level of the monster you have killed. Another way to look at it, you could upgrade a tier 80 chaotic staff with an amazing gizmo, which has used noxious components which you've received from dismantling a noxious staff, let's say. Okay, so you augment the tier 80 chaotic staff with perks such as, let's say, poison effect and increasing damage against dragons for QBD, let's say. Those, by the way, are 2 completely made up perks, and thus using it as a decent weapon, possibly not as good DPS as a tier 90 weapon, but good enough to get through a fight and level up at a decent rate. You could level up the augmented tier 80 staff to level 6, and then disassemble the items, completely destroying the staff in the process, which only cost you 200k DG tokens to make, but in return you get a decent chunk of Invention XP, and you triple the noxious components in return, which you can use to make 3 amazing gizmos with materials from 1 noxious staff, let's say. Now this is hypothetical, but I'm just trying to get a point across, that this could be a good alternative way of stockpiling your rare materials. Now, there was a comment made by JMod that as a rule, augmented equipment is not destroyed if you run out of divine charge. Now, this suggests we will need to use divination energy to charge our augmented gear up to enable them to level up whilst in combat. To do this, we need to use divination energies on our charge pack, which will be stored on our character. So, if our charge pack has a 0 divine charge, the equipped augmented gear will not be able to level up whilst we're in combat or whilst we're killing monsters. By the way, it's going to cost, I think, about 225 incandescent energy Lower tiered energy can be used in greater quantity at a ratio of 10:1 from pale to incandescent to manufacture a divine charge, to manufacture one divine charge. Not sure how long that's going to last for. The drain rate of a divine charge will vary depending on the drain rate of the item. So tier 90 will probably drain quicker than tier 80, for example. Now moving on to another topic area, tech trees. I don't think these are going to be massively important within the first batch of release, because I don't know how many tech tree specific devices, items and perks they're going to be, but let's go into tech trees. One last major thing to cover here. You will start off with a human tech, which is the core tree. Then when you reach a certain level, you will be given the option to specialize in a certain tech tree. I'm predicting around level 40, as the first components we know about that requires a tech tree are unlocked at level 40. But again, this is just hypothetical, this bit. You will then get two options, Dwarven technology or Goblin technology. You'll have to choose between the two. If you choose the Dwarven tech tree, you will eventually get access to all unlockables within Invention, but it's just the fact that you'll get access to the Dwarven technology quicker than that of the Goblin technology. So just choose wisely. This is actually quite important in terms of the playstyle and linking in Invention to your playstyle. The best thing to do is to look on the Invention Skill interface, see what unlockables require the Dwarven tree and Goblin tree retrospectively, and decide what tech tree matches your playstyle more than the other. Now that's going to be very difficult because you're not going to know what all the devices do, but again, I'm going to be trying to push out content explaining tech trees, devices and all sorts. So yeah, hopefully I should be able to help you out with that in the future. At the moment as well, the reason why I said this isn't going to be hugely, it's not going to hugely impact us straight away at the beginning of Invention, is that at the moment Mod Maltair has said it's a framework, and so there might not be many tech tree specific unlockables included within the first batch of Invention. Now the important things to note, which you might have questions about, I'll just go through now. You will not always get a good perk. There is RNG involved. You could end up creating something which is completely terrible, such as having a permanent skull whilst using this weapon, and yeah, that would be pretty horrific. It could be in between where you create an item which has perks of scavenging skills, let's say, where it collects items for you, but it also has a skull on your head permanently. Or it could be all round a fantastic collection of perks because you've used lots of rare materials. This is down to RNG partly, but if you use more rare materials than junk items, you are going to have a good chance of unlocking a very good perk. So it does depend on the rarity of the materials as well which you use. Also, when using materials to create perks, you'll initially get a list of possible perks that would be included or augmented onto that gizmo. And then when you create it, it seems to choose two of those perks. The higher tier items that you dismantle, the less junk materials that you're going to receive. Initially, this skill is an item sink as well, but there will be ways to get some return on your investment by selling gizmos and other devices later on as you level up the skill or feel like you just want to get a bit of GP on the side, or maybe you hit 99 or 120 first, or one of the first people to hit that, and then you want to start making these devices and selling them to other people who are training. And overall, you will now notice a charge pack, inventor's tools, and material pouch on your character and inventory interface from Monday onwards. And you can use these interfaces to train up your invention skill, and potentially dismantle items on the go, such as whilst you're carrying out a Slayer task. But yeah, the boat most of us are in now is the anxious wait to see what items will be more useful to break down than others. And this is something I am waiting for on release due to being busy with work. I've been unable to stockpile up with items. As I'm making this video on Saturday, I've literally not bought any additional items as of yet. You know, at the end of the day, we don't know what items are going to be more junk than others. We don't know what items are going to get us the best materials necessarily, you know, which will then create the better perks for better experience. So I'm just going to go with the flow on release date. And I've got the excess money to spend if I need to do so, which I've built up through PVMing. Thank you so much for watching my initial invention skill guide on what we know so far. Future videos will include perk combinations, leveling up my weapons, best methods to train the skill, what items to buy and stockpile on whilst you're training the skill, tech trees and the playstyle they represent. And that wraps up this video on the brand new Elite Invention skill. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you found this useful, and also subscribe if you are new here. That would be fantastic. I'd really appreciate it. The hype's going to be real next week, so I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you in the next one.